Hi there, Megan Thompson with Megan Thompson Coaching, and I have Autumn Brennan here, our resident teen expert. Welcome, Autumn.
Welcome, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. I am the leader of the teen program. Here I am.
That's right. That's right. And so we're here to talk about how to assess whether or not your child, your teen is in effective therapy, especially if a therapist is sharing with you that your sensitive teen just needs to get their emotions out. If you feel like your teen just needs to let it all out in order to regulate, we're going to talk about why that is super unhelpful today. So make sure that you are paying attention to what we have to talk about, because this is a common misconception in dealing with the meltdown shutdown cycle for highly sensitive kids and highly sensitive teens. So why do we know what we're talking about? Here at MTC, we help parents of highly sensitive kids and teens eliminate the daily meltdown shutdown cycle in as little as 8 weeks. We help parents of young children, and then we work with teens and parents together. And we've been doing this for over a decade. We've helped hundreds of families at this point in the coaching business alone. And we've been doing, we've had that business is younger than the 10 years that we've been doing this in our career. And so it's important to understand the biggest challenge that parents can have in this dynamic, especially as a teen, parent of a teen, right? Most parents of teens who are stuck in the shutdown, isolation, refusal cycle are grateful to hear their teen finally let it all out, right? Nobody understands me. You don't get it. My friends hate me. And you might be wondering whether or not that information and the delivery of that information to you is helpful for your teen to share, right? So Autumn, let's talk a little bit about how this dynamic can come about. What are parents who are stuck in this cycle experiencing with their teen when they are letting it all out and it's quite explosive or implosive, if you will?
Right. So what I see with a lot of parents and teens in general is teens want their privacy. Right. They want to experiment. They want to be able to live life, right, as, away from their parents. They're trying to gain independence. Parents are also in a kind of a weird place. Adolescence is such a weird place where they still want to and need to, right, for that matter, assist their teens, right? They still need to be working together in order to make sure that your teenager's safe. So what ends up happening is teens start to kind of maybe unintentionally close themselves off a little bit, right? They have these ideas of things that they might want to do, or they have these ideas or these around experiences that are happening around them. But as the expectations from society, et cetera, are starting to increase, they start to have a lot more emotion about what's happening around them in their world, right? And they're not really sure at this point, because they don't necessarily always have the skills how to talk about some of these experiences that they're having, or some of these things that they want to experiment with, or that they're curious about. And so they start to maybe kind of keep it to themselves, right? Or maybe they kind of chat about it with friends, which, again, that still means that they've got this bubbling sense of emotion, right? And as parents, right, we want to know what's going on. Like we've read all these books, we've done all these things. We know that you're going through this developmental period of change, so it's got to be coming out of you somehow, right? But it's not. Yeah. They're keeping it private. And then all of a sudden, one day you sit down on the bed because you notice that they're having a hard day, or they were just grumbly all day long, and you look at them and say, "Okay, that's enough. What's going on?" Because they haven't been telling you anything, and all of a sudden, this stream of issues that they have been containing within their body comes flying out of them. But it comes flying out of them in an explosive way that at the end of the day, they can't really handle. And as a
Yeah.
parent, most of us don't really have the skill set that we need to be able to help them to stay away from that cycle of stuff, explode in an unhealthy way that I can't actually handle.
Mhm, mhm. And so how is this different, this behavior, this experience for a teenager? How is this different for a non-highly sensitive kid? What's typical for the hormonal and developmental experience? Many parents might be wondering in this what this stuff your feelings explode or implode dynamic. You as a parent of a teenager, you could be saying, well, that's just adolescence. That's just what it's supposed to be. The hormones are raging. Moods are unpredictable. Moods can switch, turn on a dime or just stay there for a week on end. How do we know that a sensitive teen is stuck in the shutdown, isolation, even meltdown cycle? And compared to a teenager who's just experiencing developmentally appropriate behavior.
Giant difference, the intensity with which they are feeling the emotion itself, right? And so when we think about the intensity as somebody who's highly sensitive, their nervous system feels things differently, right? They feel things more intensely, which means that an event like your person that used to be your best friend last year all of a sudden just became your frenemy, which is a very typical normal high school experience, right? Or experience for a teenager. A kid that's not highly sensitive may have some ups and downs about that, right?
Yeah.
They may have some thoughts about that. That's normal.
Mhm.
This is the developing healthy relationships. A kid that's highly sensitive, their ups and downs are going to be peaks and valleys. And within the intensity of those emotions, they're thinking about the situation itself on a deeper level. They're making it mean things like, if this person can't be my best friend, then that means I'm never going to have a best friend again.
Right. Nobody will be my best friend. I'll never get another one.
Right.
Everybody hates me.
Right.
The level of disastrous catastrophe that this experience it creates is indicative of the teen's emotional experience. This is a clear sign that your teen is experiencing more intense emotions and processing the experience with a deeper ripple effect, but unskillfully. And that's really important to pick out, right? Because a teenager might be able to feel big feelings and process things deeply. What does this all mean for the rest of my life, right? And a teenager who doesn't have skills to contemplate, does this mean I'll never have friends? And then turn around that statement to, wait a minute, and think about it in a different way that's more skillfully, talk themselves out of that disastrous thinking, feel themselves out of that disastrous thinking. That's what a sensitive teen with skills is capable of doing. But a sensitive teen without skills is going to ride that emotional roller coaster for weeks on end, right? And the depth might last several days, or it might just pop in and out in terms of the volatility of that experience. But the certainty that a teenager will speak with, that this is the end of the world, as in their social life as they know it, is quite different than a teen who is either not highly sensitive or is a highly sensitive teenager with skills to manage their emotions. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the difference between this is sad and frustrating. I might seek out some advice or talk about it to a parent, to an older sibling, to a family friend, versus highly sensitive teen. This is, I love the word catastrophic.
Yeah.
Ruminating it on their, ruminating on it, or just having it circle in their mind over and over again while they isolate in their bedroom and don't want to tell anybody about it because of the amount of shame that they're experiencing associated with, this obviously is my fault. I must be a horrible person if this person doesn't want to be my friend anymore, regardless of the circumstance that brought them to that place. And like you said, the difference of maybe a week tossing it around, that sad, frustrated starts to go down, right? They start to move through the stages of grief, if you will, around loss, to acceptance of like, yeah, we used to be friends. And now like I've got these other friends and I kind of move about my day, versus, that catastrophe with that highly sensitive teen. a couple of, several weeks, maybe 3 months into the school year, they still haven't actually recovered. And you notice that they literally go to school, hate it, because they're so afraid of what's going to happen with their peers, with interactions with other individuals, and then go to their room and they don't want to talk to anybody.
Right, exactly. And you just picked a really good point. The ripple effect of the intensity of the emotion can lead a highly sensitive child and a highly sensitive teen without skills to draw conclusions that actually make it worse. No child was put on this earth to be miserable, but a highly sensitive teen or child without skills can actually add intensity to their experiences that perpetuates misery. And so a teen who experiences a typical loss of of a friend in adolescence who just doesn't want to be their friend anymore and might even spill the tea on some of their secrets that they shared, that is going to impact their wondering of whether or not they can trust the rest of their friends, which is a normal response, right? Well, if I trusted you, can I trust somebody else? But a highly sensitive teen is going to move into, I can't trust anybody else. There's no way. And they'll actually start to pull away and isolate from other friends in that dynamic because they've created a rule that people are not trustworthy. It's not worth it. I can't do this. I can't share with other people because they're going to share my information. I can't trust. And so the immediate rules that highly sensitive people and highly sensitive teens especially can create upon one negative experience has such a pervasive effect. And so when we get to what parents, what you might want to do, right? You might notice, okay, wait a minute, my teen has been this down in the dumps for 90 days. That's an exceptionally a long time, right?
Right.
And so, what would parents think would need to happen at this point? What might parents try in this dynamic to turn it around?
So what we see typically, parents might try to jump in and fix it. Right. Now, fix it comes in different packages. Right. There's the jump in and fix it on the emotional level of, let's find new friends. Let's do all of the activities. Let's just fill up our schedule to make you feel distracted. There is the fix it strategy of, oh, we didn't like her anyways, and sit there and badmouth the former BFF, right? Make the teen feel, try to make the teen feel like this isn't really a loss, right? So skipping over the emotion, right? And pushing them out of it in that way. Sometimes the fix it mode comes in the form of, I just want you to tell me all about that flooding, right? We didn't name it earlier, but that's really what we're talking about is what, when you come in and you're sitting on that bed and you're noticing, you've been in this room for about 2 months and you're still feeling pretty miserable over this best friend thing. I think it's time we talk about it. And they start to talk about it if they can, because a lot of teens, right, in all of these scenarios may completely shut you down and tell you to get out of their room. I don't want to talk about it, because in their minds, that means they have to talk about, I'm a horrible person that doesn't deserve friends.
Right.
So we got nothing at all. We got a lot of refusals, which can turn into that explosive behavior of get out of my room, leaving the parent kind of lost and going, okay.
Geez. Or, okay, exactly. Wrong time, right? So then you're in either walking on eggshells as a parent or just thinking that your teen will never open up to you. So there's despair there, there's worry, there's fear around the dynamic of how am I supposed to help if they won't let me in? And I love that we're talking about this concept of flooding, because a parent might then decide, or even prior to that, as part of the fix it, decide to sign their teenager up for individual therapy. Now, as a highly sensitive teen stuck in the meltdown, shutdown, refusal cycle, isolation cycle, going to individual therapy, what is a typical individual therapist going to do to try to solve this problem?
Tell me about everything that's the problem. Tell me about all of the stuff. I want to hear all of the facts, similar to what the parent's going to do, right? And not necessarily aware of the fact that when we repeat back a memory, when we repeat back a situation, we give ourselves access to all of the memories or all of the emotions, associated with those memories. And for a highly sensitive teen, somebody that experiences emotions more intensely, it's too much emotion. So that concept of flooding is, it might seem like it's a great idea to get all of this out of you, to get all of these emotions out of you, but not if These are complex, intense
Mm-mm.
emotions that have been built up over time.
Yeah.
Or that are associated with something that, let's face it, losing your best friend forever, in high school and feeling ostracized, that's a little dramatic for some people, right?
Right.
It might be sensitive or not. That can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
And so being put in a position of, I need you to bring all of that back up. You have to bring all of that up. So maybe even feeling like they don't have a choice, or they're feeling trapped. Well, I have to do this because
Right.
this is what my parent is telling me, or this is what the therapist that knows what they're doing is telling me. All of this emotion comes up, and now I feel completely out of control because my whole body
So
is
drained.
radiating. Yeah.
So drained. Exactly. And so then it creates a situation where the teen is perpetuating venting in the therapy setting. And not only is that super ineffective, right? And just in terms of, you and I have been therapists for longer than 10 years. We've been both of us working in the mental health field
Right.
since high school.
Right.
And in our personal lives had connection even prior to that. So
Right.
we've been around the block for many, many years in terms of observing skill sets of professionals in this field. And so
Right.
now as coaches, when we hear that a teen or even a child has been just, spewing forth what it is that they're worried about, or what's been on their mind, what they've been struggling with, and that's the majority of the session time for, in working with a therapist. It's like nails on the chalkboard for me. I can imagine similarly. I see you nodding.
Yeah.
I mean, I start grinding my teeth.
Right.
Why? Why? Right? Because a teenager who is stuck in this experience of feeling overwhelmed by their emotion, and the depth of the emotion going deeper, with conclusions that create not only shame, but also perpetuate self-criticism, low self-esteem, even depression and anxiety symptoms. The teen at that point, stopping the conversation is a skill. Right? Think about this. If you've got like a geyser just spewing out, and there's no stopping, putting a top on that geyser is helpful, feels like there's relief there.
Right.
And so once we use the concept, the metaphor of Pandora's box with our clients a lot, right? But if you've got a professional or a parent who's like, no, take the lid off. Good. What happens? The teen is soaking wet at the end of it. And then you're like, thank you so much. That was really helpful information.
Right.
The teen feels used and abused in that experience. Now what? Right?
Right.
Now what? So there's
More
relief
helpless.
in terms of the pressure, helpless. Exactly. The pressure has been released, right? All of that bubbling. I'm using the example of water. We can use lava. We can use Pandora's box, whatever, right? All of that's out, but it doesn't, like, talking about it doesn't stop it from bubbling back up and from accumulating. Again, we use this concept of a geyser. The water's still under the surface. It's going to come to the surface again without skills to learn how to dissipate it. And this is really important, because what do teens actually need when they are stuck in this cycle, right? Highly sensitive teens who are stuck in this cycle need a specific set of skills to manage their own emotional intensity, so that it doesn't feel unbearable.
Right. And, it's funny, we're having this conversation. I had a trainer once that discussed venting without problem solving is just leaving someone further in the hole.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're just reiterating. So just like Megan is saying, we're literally just reiterating all of the problems, but we're not offering somebody a solution. That is what hopelessness is.
Yeah. Venting is not a coping skill. Nope.
Yeah. So how do we move from this place of what comes next? Problem solving. Problem solving comes next. Here's the key. Problem solving isn't necessarily fixing it. Problem solving is helping someone to address the emotions that they're experiencing so that they can feel in control of themselves again, so that they can access hope, so they can access a path forward. That's where we're going to move next.
this is really important because in both of our careers, we've supervised not only young therapists, but also therapists who've been working for a really long time who just didn't have this skill set.
Right.
And, in that, a therapist who hears the spewing forth, what's the typical reaction that a therapist has? How do they receive that information? Let's talk about this in terms of how they view whether or not this is helpful, useful, etc. Because if a teen is going to therapy and venting, it's important to understand the missing pieces that a lot of professionals are perpetuating here.
Yeah. So typically what you'll see, with someone that's a little bit less skilled, that really hasn't dived into some of the concepts that we're talking about here and really understanding and valuing them. They might, start to move directly into like that problem solving, but problem solving things similar to what a parent would do. Right. So that idea of, okay, well, we're just going to help you make more friends.
Yeah.
Like, where can you meet more friends? What would that be like?
Let's make a list.
Yeah, let's make a list. Let's make a checklist. What's that going to be like? How are you going to
practice icebreakers?
Yeah, let's get those social skills going. But at the end of the day, we're forgetting the component that you can't use social skills. You're not going to show up as your best self and someone that someone else is going to want to relate to, even on a nervous system level, especially if you don't feel confident, if you don't feel in control of your emotions. So at the end of the day, what we end up doing is sabotaging that teen.
Yeah.
Because now we put them into a new situation where they are seeking to confirm what they already know to be true. I am not worthy of being a friend. And they're going to prove it because they don't have the emotional control to be in the situation they're now in.
Yeah. Exactly. Highly sensitive teens need the skill to understand the concept of self-fulfilling prophecy and break down any sort of ineffective self-fulfilling prophecies before they fulfill them. And that's a big missing component to the traditional way of just going through talk therapy. So when you get to the point of understanding the dynamic that's necessary and why highly sensitive teens are so much more receptive to coaching and especially in this dynamic, they're looking for direct skills, but with the contingency that they're not expected to spew out all of their emotional experiences while they're building those skills. And so, a typical therapist would be like, oh, you just shared all of this with me. Good. And they're rubbing their hands like, now we got something to work with. They're ready to dive in. Right. But, I've used this metaphor before and I just can't stop using it. Like you can't teach somebody to digest well if you're asking them to vomit. Like the therapist gets all the vomit and it's, it's so gross, but like, I have to use it again because it's, in this dynamic, it's just like the therapist is like, yes, I have all this puke here. Like, let me dive through. It's tons of information. Great. Right. Like, there's pieces of food here and I'll stop being gross. Now I have something to work with. Wait a minute. You had something to work with when the kid was shutting down.
Right. Absolutely.
That's a symptom of the meltdown cycle that we need to be focused on. And so being able to shift this in a different dynamic where the teen is focused on moving forward and reaching their expectations, reaching their goals, they have their goal oriented, because many highly sensitive teens are also high achieving. They might even be intellectually gifted or some other creatively gifted. We have so many clients who are just beautiful artists. In our work. We've seen how they process the emotional experience and get it out. I mean, what a highly sensitive kids can do and teens can do when you give them, a pen and a blank piece of paper. It's just beautiful. And the experience of being able to do that in order to reach a goal of breaking out of the cycle, of feeling cool, calm, collected when making, reaching their expectations in school, et cetera. And with friends, right, which is our primary example today. The dynamic of being able to do this in a step-by-step process is incredibly important. Teens need to be able to break out of that mindset perspective that the world is ending and that they don't have the ability to be skillful, right? And this is not something that a parent can just say, right? We already talked about how reassurance just creates this divide where the teen feels like you're trying to convince them of something they already feel pretty solid in their belief system. So they need to change that belief system, and that has to be direct work with the teen and work with the parent to not sabotage it. And then on top of that, being able to build that connectivity in a way that is pacing the teenager and managing that emotion. And that needs to help. You have to balance the understanding that you're not going to be teaching or treating your teenager like they're fragile either, right? But it's also really important to balance expectations. Your highly sensitive teen who's just in this vent session cycle does not have skills. That is not skillful to just let it all out. That there's no dial in that experience. There's no toning down. There's no dissipating of the emotion or pacing of the emotional experiencing. Those are all skills that a highly sensitive teen needs in order to stay consistently out of the isolation cycle. Parents who take their teen to therapy, drop them off, the teen might feel better for a couple of days because they loosened their grip, right? But then they're right back into the same pattern when something else happens, if you're not building those pervasive skills. And the teen starts to think, well, is going to therapy even relevant? Or they start to think, you know what, I've got this, right? And yet the cycle continues as the parent. And so you can feel pretty frustrated, right? But also lost in terms of wanting your teen to keep going to these therapy sessions because you don't see pervasive change. But the teen is starting, recognizes that venting is just a waste of time. And
it's
so
another, go ahead, sorry.
Well, I just, the conclusion that they draw is, I can do that with my friends, or I can do that, through thinking, right? Because rumination is internal venting.
Yeah.
And so what do I need to go talk to somebody about this for? So I've got this doesn't mean I have the skills to manage my emotions. I've got this means I don't need somebody to hear me explode. I can do that on my own. Right. And so that's a completely different dynamic, but a teenager isn't going to be a teenager without skills isn't as articulate in being able to share their process, how they process their emotions skillfully, because they don't even know that those skills exist.
Right. You got me excited talking about this because I'm just sitting here preach. But you said something really important in there. You noticed, that venting is not emotional experiencing, right? You have, in order to feel in control of an emotion and to build skills to control emotion, you have to be able to, the goal is to be able to experience emotion, which means that you've got to do it in little pieces. And when we think about what venting really is, venting is the opposite of all of that. It's emotional avoidance. Let me get it out as quickly as I can so I don't have to feel
your body's shutting down in that dynamic. Yeah, exactly. Sorry. And we're both so excited we keep talking over each other.
Can you tell this is a topic worth talking about?
Yes, for sure. Oh my goodness gracious. It's like, I mean, think about it. Like when you blurt out like, blah, I can't believe I just need to let it out, blah. Do you even remember what you said? No, you certainly don't remember what you felt like. Right. It's just the stream of consciousness. You can't control it. And as an adult, you might do it less often. Right. Or you might do it with somebody who can then help you problem solve. And if you're not highly sensitive, it might feel helpful, even though it's not helpful for anybody to be venting, highly sensitive or not. But if you are highly sensitive, as an adult, you're likely feeling embarrassed. Holy smokes, I can't believe I shared that with my dear friend, or I can't believe I just talked to my husband like that, or whatever, whoever you share it with. The embarrassment of venting it and having that emotional explosion is very present as a highly sensitive adult. So noticing that for a highly sensitive teen, seeing things going on, right? The skill set is lacking. And that needs to be a dual process. Highly sensitive parents plus highly sensitive kid, or non-highly sensitive parent, you need to be able to learn to speak your teen's language and help them pace that process. But you both have to learn that language at the same time. Otherwise, your teen's going to be ahead of you, and then that's going to feel even more invalidating because highly sensitive teens already feel misunderstood, disconnected from their parents. and especially stuck in the meltdown shutdown cycle. That's something that's been going on for years, whether or not the shutdowns have been happening for years. Maybe you experienced meltdowns when your child was younger, or nothing. It was just this subacute experience for quite some time, and then now the hormonal experiences, the deeper level of responsibility, the bigger level of independence creates this dynamic. Now my kid was able to handle strife with reassurance from me, and basically being a clinging octopus for as long as I can handle it. But now that I'm expecting my teen to handle themselves, that cycle of enablement has reared its ugly head, and you're experiencing your teen to not be capable of dealing with it. And this is something that I witnessed as my parents parented my sister. So it's not just something that we know how to handle professionally. It's really tiring to watch a family member go through this. And the whole entire family at this level believes that the highly sensitive person in the family, the teenager, can't handle it. At that point, I remember watching my sister just, freak out about all the expectations that were on her plate. She was, athletic, had, a busy social life, also had, lots of schoolwork to do, and schoolwork didn't come easy for her. She was able to achieve good grades with support. But there was a lot of emotional handholding that my parents did to support her in that. And it created this wedge of like, you're just not capable of doing this on your own. And that drastically impacted her success in life. And we see this all the time with the teens that we talk to, here in this work, and then also the work we've done over the years in our clinical practice. The expectation that your teen should just be able to figure it out, or should already have the skills that you think you have, or that you think they have, creates a bigger wedge that is part of the reason why this venting might feel like for you a step in the right direction, because finally you hear some information, but really is just the opposite side of the same coin of skilllessness.
Yes. And we didn't even touch on all of the relationship repairs that you have to do after you vent. We don't need to go down that alley, but know that that's a whole different alley that Megan's kind of hinting at right now. Right. And noticing how that really reinforces a teen's desire to, maybe push themselves more into isolation, right? Mm-hmm. Or push themselves towards ineffective coping, right? Or we also haven't really touched on like the results of getting all of this emotion out, right? And feeling flooded, and then thinking about everything that you just said while you're sitting there by yourself and noticing, I don't know what to do with myself. So let me veg a little bit more. Maybe, if you're lucky, it's on Netflix, that we're doing that emotional avoidance, but, certainly can be, as emotion increases, it can be other things, right? It can be vape pens, it can be alcohol, it can be different drugs, it can be self-injury, right? If we're really getting to that place of that level of numbness, that's when self-injury can certainly come up, or that intensity of the emotion. Even kind of a sense of attacking the self. I'm not worthy, right? So lots and lots and lots of different things certainly spin off of what we're saying, and why just understanding the concept of the flooding, just understanding that really we need to build some skill sets here, so that teenagers with these really intense emotions can balance, right? So that they can have an experience just like every other teenager, and be able to use that experience to better themselves and to create the life that they want, right? So that they can create a space for themselves where they are going off to college if that's what they want, or they are starting a job and getting an apartment at, once they turn 18, or as they get older, if that's what they want. But they're doing it with confidence, and they're doing it with a confidence that I can start and end relationships, right? Just because we kind of stuck with this example, in a way that feels good for me.
Yeah. Exactly. Experiencing an event where you didn't have any control, and then also having the experience of an emotional lack of control is a double whammy for a teenager. And so especially for highly sensitive teens, that experience and that belief that, you know what, I can't even contemplate being able to say no to anybody who would actually want to be my friend now, because I'm just so desperate for, and lonely, desperate for friendships. And in desperation, people act out of systems. You need to be able to follow skills and learn skills systematically, before it gets to the point where you're desperate. Because once you get to the point where a teen or even a parent is acting in desperation, it's really, really difficult to even follow a plan at that point. So it might not even be a fit for the work that we do at that point,
Right.
because there's such a crisis level experience going on in the home. And that would be more appropriate for a therapy dynamic. But finding a therapist who understands that skill level is few and far between, I have to say, just because we've been helping people around the world for years now, and we haven't seen people who really understand this dynamic and can turn it around fast. Instead, we've seen parents and teens who have gotten out of the crisis cycle, worked with somebody to break out of that pattern, but not the deeper patterns that have perpetuated the issues, and then they come to us. So the experience that I think is important for us to kind of acknowledge is that this there is a way out. Highly sensitive teens and their venting component, that is not part of the personality trait. And that's really, really important to understand. Experiencing deep emotions does not go hand in hand with exploding on those deep emotions, with blasting them out or numbing them out. That's a symptom of lack of skillfulness, a lack of skills. Skills are easy to teach when you have a positive environment, especially with the parenting environment involved. So highly sensitive teens, highly sensitive children alike, change their relationship to themselves when their relationship with their parents becomes more positive. And that's the opposite of what's necessary for a non-highly sensitive child or teen. Non-highly sensitive child or teen is going to count the positivity in their life more regularly once they feel better about themselves. But a highly sensitive child or teen needs to feel better about themselves through feeling better about their relationship with their parents. So the relationship with the parents helps them feel better about themselves, which then allows them to take action in their life outside of the home in more consistent ways. We call this generalizing the skill. So if your teen is showing up like a people-pleasing perfectionist in school, for example, that's not skillfulness. That's just holding it all in, right? And trying to perform for other people. So it's a facade. And that dynamic is not it's not to be mistaken as skillfulness. But once you shift being able to understand your teen and the ability for your teen to to speak with you in a collected way, they might necessarily be calm, because if they're upset, that's okay to not be calm. But there's a big difference between explosion and just feeling like there's no end in sight to the vent session versus an outburst or a comment of despair and then a willingness to problem solve after that even. And that's important because a teenager who's willing is often going to initiate either their own ideas to solve the problem or specific questions that will help them solve the problem. The woe is me vent component of despair is often met with a problem solving response from the parent. We talked about that earlier. And then frequently and consistently discounted by the teen. You get a lot of yes buts as a result, right? But a teen who has skills is able to take that in, but ask for it first. You can't ask for help if you don't feel regulated and capable of implementing it. So that's what we teach our clients, and it's incredibly important for you to seek support that has that component. So, anything that's last words I should say on them before we wrap up our show for today on this
it's a
deep topic.
I was going to say, you're asking me a trick question, because the answer is going to be yes. I could sit here for hours, right? We could have this conversation on and on. And so I want to say no, and I do need to reflect on, because a lot of the audience of this is going to be parents, not teenagers, right?
Mhm.
And you might show it to your teen, but more than likely you're a parent watching this.
Mhm.
And so I want to take a second and just validate the parental experience associated with what we just talked about. We just,
Yeah.
spent this time talking about what your teen is going through and how important it is for you to, support your teen in a way that's actually going to work, right? So to
Yeah.
decrease their frustration. But that is not to say that, there isn't this entire flip side of it, which we touched on briefly, but, even, from a parent perspective, you're experiencing pain, you're experiencing frustration, you're experiencing your own helplessness. It can create conflict within the home in a way that you didn't expect, right? Like
Yeah.
there's so many things that you can expect when you have a teenager that like, oh yeah, they're going to experiment with things, or oh yeah, we're going to have to put some boundaries up. But here's this level of emotion for yourself, especially if you're a highly sensitive parent, that might just make you feel hopeless, right? Helpless.
Mhm.
And so we're not doing this just to help support your team. We're also doing this to help to support you. And I think that's really
Yeah.
kind of where your messaging was, towards the end, Megan. Like this is for both of you guys because you need each other during this period.
Mhm. Mhm. It's a family dynamic issue. The meltdown shutdown cycle, no matter how old the child or teen is a family dynamic issue. That means the entire family needs to be served into the outcome of breaking out of the cycle. And
Right.
that's why we talk about how it's so necessary for parents to be in charge of this growth, because if you've got multiple children, or there's multiple parents in the home, the dynamic is completely it needs to be shifted from multifaceted. So it requires a lot of support. It requires a lot of accountability. It requires systematic troubleshooting as well, because there is no one size fits all system to fix the problem. There's one size fits all strategy to turn this around, but you need to be able to troubleshoot based on how your child or teen communicates, based on how they respond, and that requires work with a professional. So if all of this is resonating with you and you find yourself feeling like you need the support as well as your teen, and you're recognizing that this is something that you want to break out of this pattern now and also quickly, we encourage you to go ahead and book a call with our team. We go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk, TEENTALK, all one word there. And then if you are resonating with this and your child is under the age of 14, so 8th grade and under, they might be 14, but still in 8th grade, then you would go to meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. This is incredibly important to understand the difference between what's relevant for teens and what's relevant for children and preteens. Those developmental stages require a different approach. So again, go ahead over to meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk if you're parenting a high school age teenager and older. And we would be happy to support you in understanding whether or not what we do is going to help you break out of the pattern that you're stuck in. In order to do that, we have to have a conversation. We need to speak about where you're stuck. We need to talk to your teenager. Again, if this is a highly sensitive teen, we need to make sure that they're willing to do the work, but also
Yeah.
they have the clarity and want to support them to that clarity as well. And we can help you find a way to get your teen on the phone if you think that that is an issue too. So just reach out to us and we can support you in that as well. We're quite good at this. And then you need to be able to understand what the goals are, right? Is your teen motivated to live their best life? Are you motivated to live your best life? And in that, rather than just chalking it up to adolescence and hoping that once your teen matures, they'll feel better about how you talk to them. And then being able to understand the dynamic of whether or not what we do is going to be a good fit for what you need. And if that's the case, then we break it down and share with you exactly how we'll help you, and you can get started right away. Same thing would be relevant for parents of children, though the conversation is just with the parents. And if none of what we do is going to be an appropriate fit, then we would be referring you to a more appropriate professional. Like we've mentioned before, what we do is specific and there's clarity there, but sometimes the shutdowns are caused by something else other than your child being highly sensitive. And for that reason, we need to assess the situation, and we would acknowledge that a different mode of support, to include even mental health treatment, might be a more appropriate route for your family. And we're happy to point you in that direction with clarity. So either way, it's a win-win on that conversation. We get to support you and, and have those conversations, and we're happy to do that. And you get to know exactly what your next steps are. So again, meganthompsoncoaching.com/teen talk or meganthompsoncoaching.com/talk. We look forward to speaking with you.